This Week with Bob Mueller on News 2.
This week,
we could decrease the number of uninsured people by half overnight if Governor Lee and the General Assembly had the political courage to expand Medicaid.
He's the Democratic nominee for governor of Tennessee. Dr. Jason Martin will outline his priorities heading into the general election.
Every candidate has to decide how they're going to spend their weeks.
The Republican nominee, incumbent Governor Bill Lee, says he will not debate his Democratic opponent.
A new stadium paid for by the team, the state, tourists, and spending around the stadium.
It's not a done deal yet, but it's likely in about 5 years the East Bank will include a new dome stadium to replace Nissan Stadium for the Tennessee Titans.
If you have federal student debt, please visit studentaid.gov.
As many as 43 million students can now apply for forgiveness of up to $20,000 of their student loan debt. More in our This Week cover story. Hello again and welcome to another edition of This Week. 43 million college students, they can now apply to have up to $20,000 of that college debt forgiven. We'll have more in our This Week cover story. A conversation with the Democratic nominee for governor and the current governor, who has no plans to take part in any debates. But first, a new stadium for the Tennessee Titans moves forward. Under the plan to replace Nissan Stadium, Mayor John Cooper says the $2+ billion construction cost would be covered by the Tennessee Titans, the state of Tennessee, visiting tourists, revenue from the stadium itself, and adjoining stadium campus businesses.
So this is a moment of urban revival. And for the construction coming up in the future, again, it's great that this is not hurting any neighborhood. There are no people living in this zero displacement East Bank. This is a great opportunity for the city, again, to create something great for us there and to use the fact of the boulevard to reconnect our city for us.
The mayor says this stadium plan would save taxpayers $1.7 billion. Nothing is final yet. The Metro Council still must approve the plan. The stadium proposal could radically change the Nashville skyline. A new stadium for the Titans that could also bring in more major events to Music City. News 2's Adam Mintzer reports on what's next for this $2 billion deal.
It could be the most expensive project in Metro history. But before kickoff at a new Titans stadium, Metro Council needs to weigh in.
And we owe it to taxpayers to not just give an automatic yes. We need to kick the tires and make sure everybody understands what we're signing up for.
Mendez is waiting to make up his mind on the deal. He wants more information on how it'll be paid for, saying so far all they have is a press release and needs documents to back up statements like this.
A new stadium paid for by the team, the state, tourists, and spending around the stadium, not by your family.
That's ludicrous, flatly ludicrous. Every economist in America would tell you that there's no such thing as magic tax dollars that spring from the earth or fall from the sky like manna from heaven.
Well, thank you.
The mayor says not building a new stadium would cost taxpayer dollars, and part of the funding will come from bonds paid for by taxes on developments around the stadium.
It's a good deal. I think Mayor Cooper has driven, yet again, a very hard bargain.
He's been trying to protect taxpayers, and in terms of the stadium, I think he did it.
So how long will this take?
Well, people are talking already, right?
Withers and others say the legislation to approve this deal could be introduced in November, with hopes of passing it in December or early 2023. But nothing is certain yet.
There's a lot of information to gather, and we're committed in the council to go out in the community and have public meetings about this.
It's up to the council to take their time, vet it out, and make sure that we're all clear on how all this stuff is going to work.
And if everything goes to plan, the goal is to have a new stadium by fall 2026. But council does have the power to stop the clock.
Now to our This Week cover story. The much-awaited federal student loan forgiveness website is now open. Applications can now be filed for the program that could bring relief to as many as 43 million college borrowers. ABC's Rena Roy has more.
Long-anticipated relief on the way for millions of Americans with student debt. StudentAid.gov now live, a new website where people can apply for federal loan forgiveness now through the end of next year. Applicants have to submit their information, including income, based on 2020 or 2021 taxes.
If you have federal student debt, please visit studentaid.gov. It's easy, simple, and fast. More than 40 million Americans can stand to benefit from this relief.
The move forgives up to $10,000 for those earning less than $125,000 a year and $250,000 for a couple. That number goes up to $20,000 for low-income borrowers who received Pell Grants. President Biden fulfilling this campaign promise just weeks ahead of the midterm elections.
I'm keeping my commitment to relieve student debt as borrowers recover from this economic crisis caused by the once-in-a-lifetime pandemic.
Republicans are seeking to block this new relief, filing lawsuits to put the program to an end.
Republican members of Congress and Republican governors are trying to do everything they can to deny this relief, even to their own constituents. Their outrage is wrong and it's hypocritical.
Critics are concerned about the price tag of this program, with estimates saying this will cost the government hundreds of billions of dollars, nearly $100 million expected to go towards vetting applications alone. Rena Roy, ABC News, New York.
And the program has been paused temporarily by a judge. Stay with us. This week continues in a moment. Governor Dr. Jason Martin. Welcome, sir. Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
And congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
You know this state. It's roughly 60-40 Republican. The Republicans hold majorities in the congressional seats, the legislature, the governor's office. How do you break that GOP blockade?
Look, I think the team sport mentality is detrimental to our country. I think it's detrimental to our state. And so we're not going out and running on red issues or blue issues. We're going out and running on issues that affect every Tennessean. Access to a great public education, better access to health care, infrastructure like high-speed internet, things that we all care about.
You got into this race in part because you were critical of Governor Lee and how he handled the COVID-19 pandemic. There was no statewide mask mandate, no vaccine requirements. There was no statewide push for folks to get vaccinated. It was urged. How would you have handled it differently?
Look, we live in Governor Bill Lee's Tennessee, where we were a hot spot in the entire world for the COVID outbreak. And while we were working in the ICUs and saying goodbye to hundreds and hundreds of patients with this disease, we were never met with leadership from the governor. We were met with silence as people in the General Assembly were pushing horse pills on people, ivermectin. We were met with threats to defund the health department. The chief vaccine officer of the state was fired. So, telling the truth and following the data would have been great places to start.
When you look at the numbers, Tennessee, unfortunately, was high for infection rates. It was high for hospitalizations. It's still the third lowest vaccinated state in the country. How did it get political? And it really did. That's really what became the issue here. People not necessarily didn't trust vaccines. They were just against them because certain people were against them.
That's right. It became political because our leaders were afraid to follow the data. And I think that it's really important for the next leader of this state to be data-driven and making decisions that impact all of our lives. And so we're going to talk about facts. We're going to talk about how we can make everyone's lives better.
Let's talk about several issues that this state is facing after the Supreme Court and the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade. Tennessee's abortion ban went into effect. The trigger law went into effect. Right now in Tennessee, abortions are effectively outlawed. There are no exceptions for rape, incest, or the life of the mother. There is an affirmative defense for doctors who perform an abortion, but you have to prove your case. My question to you is twofold. First, as a doctor, as a physician, how hard does this make your job, and what does it do for your women patients?
Look, Dobbs, I think, was a tragedy for women across the country, but that's not what took women's health care rights away. That dubious distinction belongs to Governor Lee and to the radical General Assembly, who passed that trigger law with no exceptions for rape or incest, no exceptions for a child who's the victim of sexual violence. And as a health care provider, that puts us in a terrible spot. We face felony convictions, felony trials for fulfilling our obligations to take care of the life and safety of a woman, and that is not okay.
As a candidate for governor of the state of Tennessee, what would your position on abortion be? Would you work to try to reinstate some female reproductive rights?
Big government Bill Lee needs to stay out of the doctor's office, period. Abortion restrictions, they don't stop abortions. They just stop the safe ones. Abortion restrictions don't stop abortions for everyone. Only marginalized communities who can't afford to travel to states where the service is offered. So I believe After traveling all 95 counties in this state, meeting with thousands of people, I've never seen one who wants to see an additional abortion take place in this state. But I know thousands of people who understand that government does not belong in that decision.
Many doctors like yourself signed a letter urging the legislature to at least consider exceptions for rape, incest, the life of the mother. There seems to be no interest to do that. It might be considered again, but with this legislature, it doesn't seem like that is a real possibility.
Polling indicates that 80% of Tennesseans understand that the trigger law is radical and not consistent with their values. When we start beating them at the ballot box, they'll become more interested in making changes that are in the interest of their citizens.
On the issue of health care overall, you favor expanding health care. Governor Lee and the legislature did not expand Medicare coverage, and there's no indication they plan to do that. Would you expand it, or is there another way? How would you expand health care coverage in Tennessee?
In 2018, the number one issue, according to the Tennessean in the race, was access to health care. Unfortunately, Governor Lee has not had any solutions that have made any difference in this state. We still lead the nation per capita in medical bankruptcies. We lead the nation per capita in hospital closures. Both of those trends disproportionately affect our rural communities and our marginalized communities. We could decrease the number of uninsured people by half overnight if Governor Lee and the General Assembly had the political courage to expand Medicaid, take the $1 billion a year that the federal government is trying to give to us so that we could push back against those trends.
TennCare is the state system to help folks with health care coverage here. As a physician, you deal with TennCare. How well does it work in this state?
Look, I've worked in the public health infrastructure, working at Nashville General Hospital, taking care of people who are working in 2 and 3 jobs, trying to put food on the table and still can't afford health care insurance. Medicaid is not perfect, but it improves access. Opioid deaths go down, racial discrepancies in healthcare delivery go down. There's a lot of reasons why we need to make Medicaid expansion happen.
Tennessee, as you know, is one of the few states in the Southeast that has no form of legalized marijuana, medical marijuana, recreational marijuana. It's been tried numerous times and has failed. What's your position on this in regards to medical marijuana in Tennessee at the very least?
Look, I'm a scientist by training. I'm data-driven. If you look at the science for cannabis as medicine, it's a no-brainer. There are certain diseases where we should be able to offer this medicine to people, and the fact that we can't is an injustice. Now, adult use cannabis or recreational cannabis is a bridge that I have had to come to after doing the research and learning about it. We are passing up hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue. We are passing up a crop that we could be producing right here in the state of Tennessee to give our farmers a profit source to keep the family farm. We could produce a product that is safe, regulated, does not have fentanyl in it, and takes the market away from the cartels. And I think there's a social justice angle here too. We should stop locking up primarily black and brown Tennesseans for small drug offenses.
President Biden last week before last, did pardon federal marijuana possession offenders and urged states to do the same. Governor Lee has said Tennessee will not consider issuing pardons for marijuana possession. Would you at least consider looking at who's serving what time for what offense?
Governor Lee is beholden to the for-profit prison business. And so what I would like to do is follow the president's lead here and pardon simple marijuana possessions at the state level.
The State Department of Children's Services, in the opinion of one local judge, is on the verge of collapse. It has about 10,000 children being cared for. They're out of space. Kids are sleeping in office buildings. And if there is a requirement that more children are born that may end up in child services custody, this crisis is only going to get worse. There's a new commissioner trying to take hold of this, realizing it is a major, major issue right now. How do you deal with this issue in Tennessee?
Governor Bill Lee is so proud of that big pile of money. He talks about it all the time, the rainy day fund that he's accumulated. He needs to put that money to work for people. Governor Bill Lee's Tennessee is a dangerous place to live. If you're a child in the DCS service, you're going to find yourself sleeping on the floor of an office. If you're the victim of a crime and have a rape kit that needs to be processed, that may be 30 or 40 or 50 weeks because the governor has failed to fund the TBI as requested. If you're sick and need health insurance in the state of Tennessee, it's a dangerous place because the governor has turned his back on Medicaid dollars. We can do better to take care of one another.
Tennessee's economy is booming. There's no question about that. People are moving here. Companies are moving here. Blue Oval City, Oracle, but it's not everywhere. There are distressed counties in this state that are not getting any benefit from this big boom. There are efforts to help them, but it just doesn't seem to have worked yet. How do you expand the great things that are happening in certain parts of Tennessee to help the rural areas in Sequatchie Valley and other places that are just stagnant, as it were.
Sure. Governor Lee loves to talk about the economic prosperity in the state of Tennessee, but as you mentioned, there are large swaths of rural Tennessee where they're left behind. And so we need to do three things. We need to, first of all, focus on great public education and keeping our schools public so that everyone has a chance. And that includes great vocational training if people don't want to choose college. We need access to health care, and that's Medicaid expansion. Look, when the hospitals leave town because there's no payers in a community, the jobs go with it. So we've got to get that piece in place. And the final piece that we need is great infrastructure, including broadband internet from Memphis to Mountain City.
Education funding has changed. The formula has changed. It no longer gives money directed to a district. It gives money based on the number of children, which effectively hurts urban areas like Memphis and Nashville because those children are moving out of the district. It hurts those school districts. Would you look at how this is funded? Would you think about changing it some way so that the districts get the money as opposed to a child number gets the money?
We need to make sure that public schools are fully funded. We've been in the bottom 40s in the nation when it comes to funding our public schools for years. The TISA formula, the governor's new solution, does not fix any of those problems. He has waged a war on public education his entire time in office. He's politicized our school boards. He's firing teachers for teaching American history. He's having them edit their school libraries. He didn't have the courage to stand up to Larry Arnn, who called our teachers dumb, essentially. He's not fit for office.
As you run for governor of the state of Tennessee and look at the people of this state and the diversity of the state, which is fantastic, the growth of this state, what's your number one priority? What do you want to achieve? What do you tell folks out there that you should be the person to lead this state?
We believe that no matter the color of your skin, how much money you have in the bank, who you choose to love, or what your native tongue is, Tennessee should be the land of opportunity for you. And government has a role in making that happen. We want to help create prosperous communities by having great public education, better access to health care, safe communities, and we can do it together.
Dr. Jason Martin, Democratic nominee for governor. Appreciate your time and your
insights.
Thank you, sir.
Stay
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment. Welcome back. We caught up with Governor Bill Lee this week, who told us he has no plans to debate his Democratic opponent, updated the progress of Ford's Blue Oval City, and is still smiling about UT's win over Alabama. In 2018, businessman and gubernatorial candidate Bill Lee took part in primary and general election debates. Now, a candidate for re-election, the governor will not debate his Democratic opponent.
You know, every candidate has to decide how they're going to spend their weeks. I'm out here today. I was in Lake County earlier this morning. I'm focused on being the governor. I think that's the most important thing I can do throughout these next weeks, to stay focused on the things that we've done the last 4 years and for the next 4.
Governor Lee has supported the idea of a dome stadium for the Titans and the state's decision to contribute $500 million to the project. We asked him his view of Mayor Cooper's proposal that could put a dome stadium on the East Bank by the 2026 season.
You know, I think a domed stadium would attract events into this state that would create economic activity for communities all over Tennessee. It's an investment in economic development, which is really an investment in jobs and opportunity for people. We'll have to be very certain that there's accountability around this process and to make sure taxpayer dollars are wisely spent, but it's an investment that'll be good for the state.
Governor Lee was a proponent of Nashville seeking to host the 2024 Republican National Convention, but the Metro Council said no, citing security costs and potential violence. The council also decided not to seek to host the RNC in 2028.
What's most important and what effort needs to be made in the city and in the state is to attract economic activity. I mean, our state is the lowest tax state in the country, the lowest debt state in the country, and our economy is performing better than any state in America. But we have to keep that going, and one of the ways you do it is by attracting economic activity, like large conventions. We should be doing everything we can to get large gatherings and conventions to come into our big cities to make sure there's opportunity for all.
The governor talked about the start of construction at the $5 billion Ford electric vehicle site near Memphis, Blue Oval City.
Well, we've broken ground there. Ford is moving dirt, and they are making plans, and there's a lot of activity. A lot of communities in that region are coming together to plan for the future, but yeah, there's a lot of activity happening there, and it's good movement in the right direction.
And the governor promised the state is doing all it can to have Tennesseans prepared for the coming jobs.
So vocational education is a key part of what we're trying to do in the education system right now. And we've actually committed to place a College of Technology on Blue Oval City. We are placing grants in schools around that region, particularly to expand vocational and technical education, so there will be workers prepared to go to work in that plant. That's one of the exciting things about what's happening there, is creating a lot of job opportunities in the future for lots of folks in that region, a region that desperately needs economic development.
The governor, like a lot of Tennesseans, was all smiles on recounting UT's 52-49 defeat of the Alabama Crimson Tide.
It was unbelievable. What a great game that was. Hadn't seen that much excitement in a crowd in a long, long time, and it's just great for the state of Tennessee. Go Vols.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment. I want to thank you for spending part of your weekend with us. That will do it for another edition of This Week. I do want to thank my guest, Democratic gubernatorial nominee, Dr. Jason Martin. We hope to see you back here next weekend for another edition of This Week. Between now and then, you have a great week.